Hello! Melodic death metal is a pretty polarizing label. You can blame a lot of the Gothenburg Melodeath stuff for a lot of the bad music we have today, but it's easy to forget that even In Flames, At the Gates, and Dark Tranquillity started off as good bands. This list isn't really about the Gothenburg stuff, though, because we're not really talking about Melodeath here. This video is about melodic death metal, totally different. So it's death metal that happens to be melodic. All these records I'm about to talk about either intersect with more technical or progressive metal. Some even have some straight thrashier elements. Some have some blackened elements. So this list is kind of for people who have already heard some of the more well-known stuff like Intestine Ballism, Eucharist, Unanimated, and want to dig a bit deeper. So let's go, man. First up is from France, Dementia's 1996 Encore of the Dark. Wouldn't really call this one essential or anything, but it's a good melodic record with some progressive elements, some thrashier elements. It really reminds me of Death's individual thought patterns and symbolic era, but not nearly as like technical as those. It stands on its own enough that I did not include it in the Death Worship video I did a while back where I discussed bands that kind of ripped off Chuck in the 90s. Now, I can only find 3 tunes on YouTube. So I ended up finding the CD pretty cheap on eBay a few years ago. So if you want to hear it, you can only YouTube 3 of the songs, and I doubt it's on fucking Shitify or whatever. So anyway, Dementia's next record from 1998 called Answer has some cool parts, man, but it goes a bit overboard on the whole atmospheric melodic thing at times, man. It's a bit too long, but it's worth checking out as well if you're into that sort of thing. It's just not as good as this one. So up next, man, from Slovakia is Amorbidal, their 1998 album Invidia, and I have to recommend their 1996 demo Crystal Rhapsody as well. These guys are almost reminiscent of Intestine Ballism with a less brutal edge. A lot of that ethereal sort of atmospheric weirdness that European death metal is so good at, like, providing, that whole otherworldly fantasy feel. But overall, man, it's really just a pretty melodic take on old school death metal here, with the technical and blackened elements of the other albums on this list are pretty minimized, So if you don't like melodic melodic death metal at all, you might still dig this one. I got the CD reissue from Awakening Records that's got Invidia and Crystal Rhapsody on it, so definitely check that out, man. Next on the list is another Slovakian banger, man, Apoplexy. Alright, I'm going to recommend 2 of their records, man. 1995's Tears of the Unborn and 1999's Monarchy of Damned, which is some great broken English, man, so you can tell it's going to be good. There's a 90s death influence here that's pretty clear. You can tell they were digging on some individual thought patterns type shit, but there's also this kind of fantastical, epic sort of element with like some folkier acoustic parts that you might find in a band like Caducity from Belgium, which I probably mispronounced their name, but Caducity from Belgium. There's some cool acoustic parts, sort of like an amorphous Tales from the Thousand Lakes thing, man. Good records. Apparently they dropped a new one in 2023, which I have not heard. But I bought Tears of the Unborn and Monarchy of Damned from Dark Descent a few years ago, so definitely check those out, man. Alright, so next up, man, we're visiting the country with the most famous melodic death metal exports, man. We're back to Sweden with Sarcasm, with their 1994 demo, A Touch of the Burning Red Sunset, plus their 1994 debut album, Burial Dimensions, which was recorded in 94, but did not see the light of day until 2011. Who knows why? The only official release these guys had for years was the 1998 demo compilation, which is also titled A Touch of the Burning Red Sunset. That's out of print, though, man. I got the 2-disc Burial Dimensions compilation from Dark Descent, which has their entire discography on it. Or at least up to that point. It doesn't have any of their newer shit on it, which I haven't heard. But the evolution of this band is cool because you can see them start off as a pretty standard Swedish death metal band on their early demos and then really morph into something more unique and special, I think. Not really sure why Burial Dimensions was never released back in the day, but they definitely would have been a popular name if it had been if it had come to fruition, I mean, These guys have the most probably pronounced like blackened elements out of all the bands on this list. It reminds me of stuff like Dissection, Sacramentum, Unanimated, Necrophobic, and mixed in with like Early at the Gates and stuff like that. The drummer Oscar Carlson played drums for Gates of Ishtar back in the day, but I think this is way better than Gates of Ishtar, and I like that band. It's got really great playing without going overboard, has some melodic, atmospheric elements without losing its edge, so I definitely recommend checking their stuff out, man. Alright, so up next, last on this list, is we're going down to Mexico, man, south of the border, for Cenotaph, man, with their second album, Riding Our Black Oceans from 1994. Now, a lot of people into death metal, man, they know the Mexican Cenotaph mainly for their Killer 92 debut, The Gloomy Reflection of Our Hidden Sorrows, which is way more brutal and way doomier than the album I'm about to talk about. Because of the huge change in styles, man, a lot of the folks who dig the first record are apparently kind of turned off by the direction the band took later, but I think it kicks ass. I think, they both kick ass. And if you're familiar with The Chasm, which features Daniel Corchado from the first Cenotaph record, this record should be up your alley, man. It's pretty similar to The Chasm, but with a more pronounced melodic element to it. Kind of makes me wonder why Daniel Corchado even left the band instead of just playing on this record, but at least now we got two good bands to listen to, and a couple of the guys on this record would go on to play with Shub Niggurath, or Niggurath, I don't know. Another great Mexican death metal band that dabble in some kind of otherworldly elements, so pretty cool. And then guitar player Julio Viterbo, I guess, later joined the Chasm, man. So yeah, check out this record. All right, man, so there you have it. Just a handful of melodic death metal albums that I don't see getting a ton of praise. They're, not very well known. To me, all this stuff is more interesting than 99% of the big name Gothenburg records, man. If you listen to all these bands, you'll be getting a decent variety in sound, I think, too. One of the cool things about melodic death metal, it has this kind of open-endedness, which kind of allows it to mingle with other subgenres in interesting ways, so it can kind of easily slip into black metal, thrash metal, heavy metal, progressive metal, and so on in ways that aren't awkward or jarring. It doesn't always work out, as we know, but these records are all pretty sweet, man, so feel free to recommend some albums, discuss these albums. Plus, I'll be listing everything in the description as well, with links to their Metal Archives pages, man. So thanks for watching, and subscribe.